just out of interest, if everyone puts their hands up in the air. No, go on, hand in the air, hand in the air. Okay. If you have solved those 4 problems that Jono showed there, keep your hand up. Oh. You can live in hope. There you go, Don has. So yeah, if anyone had their hand up, I think we'd all be coming to talk to you. So we've now got our panel discussion. So I'm just going to intro the 3 people we've got here. So starting on the right, we've got Don Smith, who's the CEO of Tempest Minerals. We've got Ellie Rafter, who's from Department of Communities, and Donna Boyd, who's from Fortescue. And they all use Atlassian, but in very, very different ways. We've got sort of the more traditional project management, we've got a sort of team that's starting to use it and have used it in the past, and Tempest use it in wild and wonderful ways that you could never imagine unless you're Don. I think it's probably the... so I'm going to hand over to Jono and see.
Cool, thanks, I'm back. Cool. All right, so we've just got one mic, so I'll pass it along. Why don't we do just a quick overview of how you're using Atlassian today?
Okay, so many ways. We're using Confluence, Trello, Jira. We're discovering all the other things that we could potentially use, work management, and the size of the organization makes that quite an interesting journey. So that's what we're using.
Okay, so the team that I'm in at the moment is, I guess I'm representing like a very, very immature instance of Jira at the moment. We have a total of 4 users, and Lindsay already set me up with billing a couple of weeks ago. So we really are at the beginning of that journey, and we're in a team of business analysts, so we are using Jira for just general task management, but we're also doing our requirement specifications and our testing. We've got the X-ray test management add-on that we're starting to use as well. And that's it at the moment. We're not using Confluence at all.
Yeah, so this is going to be an interesting one. I'm actually here representing a number of companies. I've got a suite of companies I'm the founder of, and Tempest is my day job, and that is included. As Lindsay intimated before, we're using Atlassian products in all sorts of wild and wonderful ways, in addition to the regular ones that everyone is using. So we started off with Jira for a very, very clear reason, which was to solve all the things that Jono was talking about before with work issues and that kind of stuff. So we wanted to start off fresh and have clear goals, and everyone is allocated tasks and that kind of thing. Me personally, Jira was extremely important for being able to see everything. So using plans, I spend half my day looking at plans and shuffling things around and okay, this is connected to this, oh, we can't do that until that. It's classic project management. But on top of that, we've also built CRM, we built a full warehouse and inventory management, and all sorts of other things, including direct connections with the WA government for basically making a lot of bureaucratic nonsense irrelevant. So yeah, a lot to unpack there. I won't take much more time.
Cool, thanks. So one big thing I noticed when I started to work in these new ways is that email started to fade away a bit, and it was no longer, I didn't live in email anymore. Would you like to talk a little bit about how that's changed in your organisation? Yeah.
I mean, we still really use email, but I love the plugin. So for us that can actually make a difference in our teams and get them to use something like Atlassian, that's easier. So if you're leading a team and you're driving how people work, much easier than being a team member, I find. But also we don't try and change behaviours of the whole organisation. So I'm actually teaching the team the practice of taking it out of Teams, so we are Microsoft House, and actually using the plugins with Jira so we can track work coming through different channels instead of making everyone give up on email. Yeah.
Cool. Now, we've got very different directions here, so I'm going to start with Dom, and just a little bit about, I guess, just that thinking when you have a new venture or a new idea, and how you know how people are going to work, how work is done, how communication's going, how that works from the top, and then I might ask Ellie how that's happening for you, maybe from the bottom, from a smaller team, and how you're interacting with other teams, and maybe you wish other teams were able to come into the system, and we'll look at it from those two different directions.
Yeah, obviously you raise scale. That's probably a critical one compared to the Fortescue example that was just given. But from even pre-using Atlassian products, I've had a hard rule in all my companies that I've run in the last 10, 15 years is no email. If someone emails me internally, they'll get sacked. Like it's that strict. I do not want to waste my time with that. So from the start, everything has been in this system. Not, obviously every company doesn't have that luxury, but certainly that's the direction we've taken. And I can also offer that something that isn't talked about enough in this realm, and it may be useful for you it's the beginning of the journey, is a thing called change management. And this is a well-known science that's been around for 20, 30 years, and the ways to achieve this are well-known. John Cotter, my partner over here, is a bit of an expert on that and on his work, and the 7 steps of change management. If you employ those to do these things, then it's much easier.
That's great to hear. I do see the directorate that I'm working within trying to do all of these things and having a really, really hard time. Everything is Excel spreadsheets, so it's a long road. But what is interesting actually is so that I guess part of my role is to design solutions, and I find that I tend to think about them in terms of Jira, in terms of building them in Jira. If I were to try and solve this problem with Jira, build the solution in Jira, even if I'm not going to, and oftentimes I'm not, because I might be reconfiguring an existing piece of software, so there's really no getting around that. But I find just in a conceptual sense, it is quite helpful for me to think in terms of Jira, what would it look like? And particularly with my colleagues as well, because we are now all using Jira, it's like a common language. But none of us come from computer science backgrounds, so we now have this common language, which is Jira, that we can use to kind of explain the concepts of solutions. Yeah.
I'll pass straight back to you, but so you've started to use Jira for a certain reason around project management, but are there other benefits that you're finding come into play when you've got?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest one actually, is having this common language. I find also that having or being able to communicate in context, which is what I think you were saying before, is really is really helpful rather than going through your emails. And then I use the add-in, the Outlook add-in extensively as well. That's fantastic. But I hate email. I'll avoid it at all costs. I tend to only reserve it just for external communication. So anything I can do to avoid email, I'm on board.
So just your question around the value of using Jira. There's another one which I've tried to hammer home with some teams I've worked with in the past, which is it can be really hard to get people to understand why you need to expand and why you need to increase the size of your team. If you actually use Jira and Confluence correctly and everybody buys into it, you're already building the business case for the help that you need. So the backlog of value that's in there, where things are getting stuck, it helps highlight the issues in the approval process. It's all data, so there's no arguing with data. And I think there are thoughts and fear of putting things in there, but actually if you think of the outcomes it can help you achieve, it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, cool. You just touched on what my next question was going to be, which I'm sure you've got some experience in that, is actually bringing new teams on board and when there's resistance. I love this question. I ask lots of people, and there's always new ways. There's no one particular way to get there. But do you have any ideas or tips for anyone that might be like, hey, I love it, right? I would love more of my organisation to do it, but I don't know how to get them to move off that tool that they love or something like that.
Sure. So you mentioned change management before. So what's in it for them? So why should they care about moving to a new tool? Like patience? It's a new language. We were talking about this. There is some software hangovers in there. So depending on where the team is coming from, if they're coming from a non-technical background, you might have to explain to them a little bit more about the Atlassian journey and where some of the terminology comes from. But yeah, patience, why, what it can give them, just the ability as well to, something's happened at home, you have to stay home. You don't need to worry about something not getting picked up or writing a big to-do list. People can just go in there and find out what's happening and support you and pick up where you left off. Like if we get really good at tracking the work that we're doing, it can just allow us to think like the power of the whole team, not an individual.
Yeah, I love that. Like one-on-one catch-ups. You no longer need to go and prepare. What am I going to say? It's just all sitting there, like what you've been doing. Cool. So I'd love to hear from everyone one more time, and then I think we're probably ready for some pizza and a drink. But was there anything that you've heard either out there in the market or from anything I said tonight that you're thinking, hey, that could make a difference to my team, or I want to have a little look at that in the future?
Okay. Can I steal your PowerPoint? Because that's really pretty, and that's what I learned today. What else have I heard? I think hearing about you at the start of your journey, and kind of I'm at the other end. I'd say anyone that is at the start of the journey, always be thinking of what does the next evolution of scale look like, so that you're always kind of preparing for that next gotcha moment, because it's really hard to unpack it, but also don't be afraid to experiment. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Something that did pop into my head when you were talking about AI actually was how I might be able to use it in my role. One of the things that I always struggle with is actually breaking down a project into all of its pieces that I'm then going to chuck into Jira. I actually found a tool the other day called Goblin Tools. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that or used that before, but it's just an AI tool that breaks down. You can give it a prompt and it breaks it down into individual items. So it'd be really great to see something like that in Jira. That'd be fantastic. Just do it for me.
I think I've got two potential answers for that. One is it's already deeply integrated with Atlassian tools, and that's a tool called Miro, which visually, so diagrammatically, so you can make charts and this kind of thing to represent the tasks and everything you're doing in Jira. I think that's been a critical one for us. I guess another thing I learned was you were identified with many things you said. I promised them over here earlier that I'd mention it, is I was reading believe it or not, the summary of the OECD economic summary in January for the last quarter of 2024, and believe it or not, Australia is at the bottom of just about every economic index, including education and specifically productivity. And so I think in the highest cost of living and the highest cost of wages in the world, I think that it's critical that we actually do start to adopt this kind of stuff to be competitive again in the international market, to be blunt.
Yeah, I think you're right as well. We've seen some software companies accelerate through the world and achieve incredible things. I think we're now at the stage where if we're not doing that, then we're no longer being attractive to employees and people working away, so we should do that. We actually have a couple of minutes, I think. Does anyone have a question for our panel before we wrap up?
I've got one, sorry, I'm not very good. I don't remember your name, the lady in the middle. You're from Communities, Department of Communities. Are there any issues we saw the breakdown, and the Jira used to be all software, but now it's in more and more places, and specifically service management. In your area, presumably sometimes you're providing services that relate to human beings and providing it to them. Is there any kind of guidance or best practice on keeping that clean from a personal information hygiene point of view? How to keep some information on the systems, or is Atlassian come with that kind of thing built in?
That's not something that I've had to navigate my way through yet. But we use CRM Dynamics. So I'm actually interested to hear like how you're using it as a CRM. So yeah, definitely something to consider. I think the public sector probably has a long way to go in terms of keeping that kind of thing secure. But yeah, I'd be really interested to see how you're using it as a CRM, if that's cool.
Not strictly relevant, but I'm sure Jono can talk to it better than I can, but you may know that the US government's just adopted Atlassian, and I'm sure they've got all the privacy stuff covered.
Yeah, so in short, all the privacy rules that you put in place for any of the applications that our AI is going to pull in from will be on it. And I don't think there's many compliance things that we can't get through at the moment, from the US company to the big 4 banks to healthcare, government. We get through them, so just get in contact with us and we can work through that. But yeah, that's good. Let's do one more question.
I know we've touched on Jira. I'm focused a bit more on the documentation space and Confluence and things like that. Something I'm having trouble with is motivating people or influencing people to share information and knowledge. I know it can be done in forceful approaches. It can also be done in motivating and influencing approaches. Just wondering if the panel has advice or tips or different ways to approach it.
So your question is around how do you get people to potentially change and share if they may or may not be ready to, essentially. I guess with anything, and anyone that has met me before, I really build connections with people first and understand a little bit more like why. So I know this isn't software strictly, but what could be holding them back? So there's fear of AI, for example. There's lots of fear around that. Instead of it being a value add to jobs, people are seeing it as being something that could potentially challenge their jobs. So I think it's just knowing more about where they're coming from and also trying to figure out like how it could help them rather than hinder them. So I mentioned before, I sound a bit repetitive, but like where they want help. So where they're saying they're at capacity, but then they won't share the information to actually unleash more capacity. So it comes a question of are you really at capacity? And if you're a leader, that's a difficult question again. It's, so really understanding, it depends where you're at. Where are you a peer or are you their leader? Would change how you approach. If you're a leader, you're probably going to go a bit harder. And if you are a peer, it is very much more a supportive, kind of understand where they're coming from, help them understand what's in it for them kind of role. I don't know if this really helps, but like I'd be happy to help maybe shoot some ideas around. Yeah.
I think you covered motivating stuff much better than I can, to be frank. Confluence-wise, we have a goal in our group of companies that every single thing that can be done has a document for it, and when we're not there, we'll never be there, but we're pretty close. And so I guess it also comes down to a bit of the change management stuff and the classic manager stuff of motivating people to want something. So, yeah, but I think the documenting everything, and people found it useful. Just before I came here, one of my team, we've got, that's something else that people should adopt, is automations in Jira. Saves so much time. Just say, I want to do this, all the tasks appear, and all the tasks have a Confluence page, and he was like, oh, how do I do this one? You know the answer, mate. So he clicked on it, and there's the document for it. So.
Examples. So show where it's worked. Show how other people are doing it. I always have a FOMO strategy, so like to create a little bit of friendly competition to see who could do it better. So have a bit of fun with it, and also if you work in a team, make it not about the individual. So you mentioned goals. If your team has a goal to be more efficient or like more productive or like more supportive, then you could put that as one of the initiatives that would support that.
Cool, yeah, I agree totally. So that what's in it for them. So my experience has been in using these things and the benefits. So it can be like, do I have to create a Confluence page for this? This feels like more effort. We have a tool, I didn't touch on it too much, it's called Loom, and it's asynchronous video. So I've got a few nods going that we do there. A new feature that's just popped up for every, you do this in the toggle in the settings, for every meeting I have, Loom will turn up and record it, and it will create a Confluence page, and it will put the Loom video in there with the summary and all the action items and things it's doing. So for me now, jumping in and seeing that, and that's all done for me, I don't have to do notes. It's amazing, so I can see it saving time there. And then in Loom, it tells me at the end of the week or something how many meetings I've saved as well. And I'm like, that's great, still a bit uncomfortable recording myself, or do I have to create a Loom? But then someone creates it for me, and I get to, instead of actually going to that meeting and doing the small talk, and we love small talk, and we love connecting and the meetings for the right reasons. What I talked about was the meetings needed to find knowledge. They're the ones we don't want. We want to spend time together to connect, build rapport, and get work done. So we're definitely not saying don't do meetings. So the good meetings. So it actually, when someone sends you a Loom, and I don't have to book into a time or muck around finding when that time is, I can actually go and just read the summary instead of doing that, or they send a spreadsheet and then walk through it, or I can do a little search for the bit I'm looking for. I'm like, that really worked for me. Like, that saved me time. I might do that for the next person. So it's that, yeah, it's just the experience of doing it, and it catches on around that. So I think that might be a wrap. Lindsay, I'm sure we've got some hungry people, and I can see there's pizzas on the table. Before we take you off stage, is there anything else that you might have wanted to say? I didn't ask a question that I promised to ask you. No? Good. Thank you so much for coming up and sharing that real life experience. We absolutely love to hear that.
Just say thanks everybody for coming along. Please do go around and chat with each other, find out how you do these things differently or what you can learn from each other. You know what to come and hit these guys up for. And yeah, just a big thank you to Don, Ellie and Donna and Jono for this evening. Really appreciate it. This is the first event that we've had here. If you enjoyed it, come and tell us with the ones in the black shirts, and we'll see if we can make another one happen. Thanks very much, everyone.